He called her low class. That was the phrase that echoed in her mind, sharp as glass. For 8 years she had moved quietly through the world, a woman of grace, of subtle influence, of unacknowledged power. Derek never knew who she truly was. He thought she was simple, unremarkable, a woman content with the ordinary, the familiar. But Sophia Catherine Montgomery Bennett had lived a double life, a life built on vision, patience, and the quiet accumulation of strength. She had watched him rise, watched him believe the narrative he told himself, and had smiled silently at the irony. She had chosen to remain hidden, believing that love would see past money, past status, past appearances. That night, the night of the gala, had been the test. The invitation had arrived weeks earlier, embossed in gold, commanding attention. The annual Prestige Gala was for the world's elite, executives, philanthropists, socialites, power players. For Derek, it was an affirmation of success. A stage where he could shine, where his worth was measured in the nods, handshakes, and polite smiles of those who could open doors. For Sophia, it was the opportunity to reveal the truth, the moment where invisible power would be seen and acknowledged. Derek had laughed at her request to attend. He laughed like one laughs at a child asking to play with kings. Sophia remembered the way his eyes narrowed slightly, the condescension in his smile, the certainty in his voice that she would embarrass him if she tried to step into his world. He spoke of class, culture, substance, as though those qualities were determined by pedigree alone, as though he were the gatekeeper of worth. He reminded her of the life he had given her, of the comfort she supposedly owed him gratitude for, of her supposed limitations. But Sophia had learned long ago that comfort without respect is no gift at all. The quiet indignities, the dismissive words, the constant underestimation, they built a resolve. She did not need permission to claim her place in the world. And she certainly did not need his approval. She had waited, yes, but waiting had been strategic, purposeful. She had spent years building influence, intelligence, and wealth in the shadows, knowing that true power rarely announces itself. It manifests in decisions made in silence, in lives changed without recognition, in the patient accumulation of leverage that the unobservant will never see coming. As Derek prepared for the gala, oblivious to her plans, Sophia moved with precision. Her closet held treasures he had never noticed, gowns that whispered luxury, fabrics that shimmered under the light like liquid night, jewels that carried history and value far beyond their sparkle. She selected a midnight blue silk dress, custom-designed, elegant beyond comprehension. It was not ostentatious, it was command in fabric, a declaration of authority without arrogance. She made a call, a number few ever knew. Within the hour, a team transformed her living room into a stage of precision. Cameras, lighting, sound, everything was calibrated to broadcast her presence to hundreds of influential eyes, a demonstration of capability Derek had never once imagined she possessed. When the gala began, Derek entered with Vanessa, his assistant, on his arm. He moved with confidence, with the smug satisfaction of a man who believed he had achieved everything on his own merit. He mingled, laughed at jokes, nodded at polite compliments, and felt the reassuring weight of social elation settle around him. He did not know that the very stage of his success, the very event he considered the pinnacle of societal recognition, was about to become a mirror showing him who he truly had failed to see. At exactly 8:30 p.m., the massive screen lit up. The MC's voice carried over the room, formal, controlled, unaware of the earthquake about to shake the assembled crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, a special announcement. The ballroom's chatter hushed, glasses paused mid-air. Derek, confident, glanced at the screen, expecting a corporate reveal. A donor with a tailored speech and rehearsed elegance. Instead, the camera showed have been a modest living room. Derek's own living room. The color drained from his face as recognition dawned. There she was. Sophia, seated with poise, her midnight gown a declaration of transformation. Her presence demanded attention. Her eyes, clear and penetrating, met the camera, and through it, every person in that room. "Good evening," she said, her voice steady, commanding, yet imbued with warmth. My name is Sophia Catherine Montgomery Bennett. Some of you may know me my maiden name, Montgomery. Yes, those Montgomerys, the Montgomery Foundation. The room erupted in whispered astonishment. Billionaires, CEOs, philanthropists, they exchanged incredulous glances. Derek froze. He understood immediately what had happened. This was no ordinary announcement. This was a revelation. His wife, the woman he had called low class, the woman he had dismissed, was the very architect behind the generosity that funded the gala, the scholarship programs, the community centers, the hospital wings. She had lived quietly as a homemaker, but she had orchestrated impact and influence on a scale he had never comprehended. Her speech flowed, methodical, precise, emotional. She spoke of loss, of grief, of the decision to remain anonymous, of love tested by assumptions and appearances. She recounted her own choices, the life she had lived quietly in the shadows, her desire to be valued for her character, her mind, her heart, not her inheritance. Each word was deliberate. Each pause measured. She exposed the irony of Derek's arrogance, the discrepancy between perception and reality, without ever resorting to anger or vindictiveness. She revealed the truth of her influence, the sterling account, the memberships, all facilitated by her connections, her strategy, her insight. Derek's humiliation was immediate and absolute. Vanessa had retreated, the realization of her complicity in the evening's optics dawning upon her. The audience erupted in applause, but the focus was not on Derek. It was on Sophia. She had claimed the spotlight, not with vengeance, but with undeniable truth. The next hours, days, weeks, they were a cascade. The gala's footage went viral, exploded. Headlines screamed of humiliation, revelation, and the invisible hand of the woman Derek had never truly known. Derek faced a professional reckoning, a personal collapse. His career was compromised. His social credibility questioned. Sophia, in contrast, emerged not only as a philanthropic titan, but as a model of composed authority, of intentional power, of subtle dominance wielded with elegance. Her lessons were clear. True wealth is not in money alone but in knowledge, influence, and the capacity to act decisively. Real respect is earned, not assumed. Character outshines appearances, and substance always prevails over superficial judgment. Sophia's transformation, her reveal, was more than spectacle, it was education for those who underestimated her, a masterclass in patience, dignity, and self-empowerment. Derek tried. He called, he texted. He begged. All avenues were blocked. Sophia had learned the hardest truth: some lessons must be taught through experience, and some doors, once closed, are never reopened. The house, the foundation, the social world, they were hers, built quietly for years, acknowledged publicly in a single, orchestrated moment. Derek had learned too late that opportunity and love can be invisible until recognized. That privilege without awareness is fragile, and that dismissing those who operate in silence can cost more than wealth ever could. Months passed. Sophia thrived. Her name became synonymous with strategic philanthropy, elegance with impact, genius with intelligence. Derek rebuilt, humbled, chastened, but always aware of the woman who had lived beside him, unseen, unvalued, and yet unstoppable. Their paths crossed again, briefly, professionally, in social circles. But the power dynamic had shifted irreversibly. Her indifference was final, her respect for herself absolute. Derek learned that presence is not always physical, influence not always visible, and that underestimating someone is a gamble with the highest stakes. The city never forgot the night Sophia revealed herself. Memory has a strange relationship with power. People do not forget those who change the narrative, what they believed was true. Sophia became more than a name. She became a symbol of quiet strength, intellectual wealth, and emotional independence. Young women spoke about her in universities. Business forums analyzed her strategy, and philanthropists studied the structure of the Montgomery Foundation's operations. The foundation itself expanded rapidly. New programs emerged: art education grants, rural medical outreach initiatives, scholarship pathways for students from marginalized communities who showed exceptional intellectual promise, but lacked financial access. Sophia believed deeply that intelligence was universal, but opportunity was not. Her funding model was strategic, not emotional. She did not give charity as performance. She invested in human potential as infrastructure. Meanwhile, Derek's world felt smaller every day. His demotion at Sterling Industries was not just professional punishment. It was psychological restructuring. The man who once walked executive corridors with confidence now carried the quiet awareness that every colleague knew the story. Some were sympathetic. Others were cruel in subtle ways that hurt more than direct insults. Human beings are skilled at social punishment without saying a word. They stopped inviting him to lunch. They spoke slightly slower when explaining simple concepts. They nodded politely, avoided meaningful conversation. Status, Derek learned, was not about salary or title alone. It was about how people felt when they saw you walk into a room. His new apartment was modest. 2 bedrooms, neutral walls, standard furniture. No marble, no grand art, no city skyline windows reflecting corporate success. At night, he sometimes sat alone listening to distant traffic sounds, thinking about conversations he should have paid attention to when Sophia spoke. He remembered her discussing literature. He remembered her asking about ethics in business. He remembered her mentioning philanthropic philosophy. Though he had tuned it out, assuming it was intellectual decoration rather than serious knowledge, he began reading more. Not business summaries. Actual philosophy, history, social psychology. He discovered something painful. Sophia had never spoken down to him intellectually. He had assumed she was intellectually inferior, because she did not display academic arrogance. That realization hurt more than public humiliation. Because it revealed that ignorance is not always lack of information. Sometimes it is the decision not to value what is already in front of you. 3 months after the gala, Derek visited the children's hospital wing funded by the Montgomery Foundation. He did not go publicly. He went alone, volunteering quietly after contacting the hospital administration. The children did not know who he was. That anonymity felt strangely comforting. He helped distribute toys. He read stories to children recovering from surgery. He learned names. He learned that healing is not only medical, it is emotional. One afternoon, a young girl asked him a question. "Why are you sad, mister?" The simplicity of the question struck him. Because children see emotion without social masks. "I made some mistakes," Derek said. "Can mistakes be fixed?" Derek hesitated. "Some can't." The girl thought about this. "My teacher says even broken crayons can still color." Derek did not answer immediately. That sentence stayed inside him for weeks. Meanwhile, Sophia rarely spoke about Derek publicly. Not out of bitterness, but because her life was moving forward, not backward. She attended global economic forums discussing sustainable philanthropy models. She met technology leaders exploring education accessibility through artificial intelligence learning platforms. She negotiated multi-year funding agreements for community innovation hubs. People were surprised by her business intelligence. They should not have been. Philanthropy, Sophia believed, was economic architecture disguised as compassion. If you want to change society, you must understand systems, not symptoms. She once told an interviewer that generosity without strategy is temporary relief. Sustainable impact requires long-term thinking. The interview clip was shared millions of times. Young entrepreneurs saved it as inspiration. Derek watched that interview late one night. He paused the video at a moment where Sophia smiled slightly before answering about leadership. He remembered that smile. It was the same smile she had when reading quietly by the window. The same smile she had when discussing books. The same smile he had once taken for granted. 6 months after the gala, Derek attended a networking conference representing Sterling Industries. He stood near the coffee station, holding a paper cup instead of champagne. A young intern approached him. "You were at the gala, right?" "Yes," Derek said cautiously. "I saw the video. Your wife is amazing." Derek nodded. "She is." The intern studied him. "Do you regret it?" The question was not hostile, it was genuinely curious. Derek thought for a long time before answering. I regret not understanding her when I had a chance. The intern sipped coffee. People think success is about getting high enough that others look small. What is it really about? Derek asked. The intern smiled. I think real success is when you can stand next to someone brilliant and not feel threatened. Those words stayed with Derek. He started therapy shortly after. Not because someone forced him. Because he realized insecurity had shaped many of his decisions. The need to feel superior. The discomfort when he felt intellectually or socially overshadowed. The desire to maintain image rather than substance. Therapy forced him to confront childhood experiences he had suppressed. Financial insecurity during adolescence. Social rejection during early schooling. The fear of being invisible. Ironically, that fear had driven him to dismiss the very woman who valued him before his success. Growth is painful when truth replaces comfort. 1 year after the divorce, Derek volunteered more frequently. He helped coordinate educational visits. He spoke to young professionals about ethical ambition. He never mentioned Sophia publicly. But sometimes people saw him pause when the Montgomery Foundation name was mentioned. Regret is not loud, it is quiet. It sits in corners of memory and waits. 2 years after the gala, the final meeting happened. Sophia was attending a foundation-sponsored art education initiative launch. The hall was filled with investors, educators, and community leaders. Derek approached slowly. He did not rush. He did not interrupt her conversation. He waited respectfully until she turned. Their eyes met. No hostility. No warmth either, just recognition, like meeting someone whose life once intersected yours but no longer does. Derek, hello, she said. Her voice was calm. Polite. Distant. I just wanted to say I understand now, he said. I understand what I lost. Sophia studied him for a moment, then she spoke softly. I believe you do. Silence followed. I'm sorry, Derek said. For everything. She nodded slowly. I hope you've learned and grown. I have. But I know it doesn't change the past. No, Derek said. It doesn't. Sophia placed a hand lightly on his arm. It was not romantic. Not emotional, it was human. Closure without reconciliation. Then she said something that would stay with him forever. The fact that you needed to lose me to see my value tells you everything you need to know. Real love sees worth before loss forces the lesson. She removed her hand and walked away. Surrounded by people who admired her, who respected her, who valued her without conditions. Derek watched her disappear into the elegant, intelligent world she had built quietly all those years. He realized something painful but beautiful. Sophia had never wanted revenge. She wanted recognition, not for wealth, not for status, but for the human being she was, and he had failed to give that. The months following the gala felt like a lifetime for Derek. Each morning, he woke in a modest apartment that smelled faintly of cleaning supplies and city dust. A world away from the marble floors and designer interiors he once considered home. He began keeping a journal, something he never imagined he would do. But it became a tool of accountability. Every morning, he wrote down his thoughts, his regrets, and the small victories of becoming a man who finally listened more than he spoke. Sophia's presence haunted his consciousness, not as a tormentor, but as a mirror. He replayed moments of arrogance and neglect. The casual dismissals, the laughter at her quiet wisdom, the times he had minimized her achievements. Each memory was a lesson, and each lesson a thorn of humility. Derek had always equated status with value. Now he understood that true value was often invisible, quietly shaping the world without expectation of recognition. Sophia, meanwhile, continued to flourish in ways Derek could barely comprehend. Invitations from international organizations poured in. She was a keynote speaker at a summit in Dubai discussing philanthropy and sustainable education initiatives. She consulted with tech entrepreneurs about using AI to bridge learning gaps. Her wardrobe was no longer a mere fashion statement. It became a symbol of empowerment, elegance, and authority. Every appearance reinforced her brand, Sophia Montgomery, a woman of substance. Derek watched cups of her online, sometimes willingly, sometimes by accident. He saw the way she commanded attention, not by force, but by her presence, intelligence, and authenticity. He watched as she spoke with clarity about systems of social impact, about empowering the next generation, about turning wealth into meaningful legacy. It was a world he had assumed was reserved for people like him, a world he had mocked when he believed his wife belonged elsewhere. He began volunteering more intentionally, not for image, but to rebuild a moral compass he had neglected. The children's hospital wing became his sanctuary. The quiet moments reading to patients, teaching life skills, observing hospital operations. These were the spaces where he confronted the gap between his former arrogance and his current humility. He learned patience, compassion, and the weight of true responsibility. Derek had grown in ways his title could never measure. But growth alone did not erase regret. Every interaction with colleagues was a reminder of public scrutiny. Whispers followed him through hallways. He became acutely aware of the difference between power he earned and power he inherited or was gifted. Sophia's influence was invisible to him for 8 years. And now that visibility made him painfully conscious of the limits of his own accomplishments. He had climbed corporate ladders, but she had built entire bridges, funding, mentorship, strategy, without recognition. In the evenings, Derek often reflected on love and respect. He realized that relationships are a delicate ecosystem, and underestimation can poison even the deepest connections. He remembered her quiet confidence at the gala, the way she spoke with authority, commanding attention without demanding it. He had been so fixated on appearances that he never paused to see the person standing beside him, the woman who had loved, supported, and empowered him while he ignored her contributions. Sophia, on the other hand, had no time for nostalgia. She channeled energy into building, creating, and leading. Every foundation meeting was an opportunity to advance impact. She had learned the truth about human behavior. The people who judge, belittle, or dismiss often reveal their own insecurity, not the other person's limitations. Sophia treated people based on character, not reputation, and this philosophy became the cornerstone of her work. 2 years after the gala, a charity auction brought their worlds into intersection once again. Derek attended as part of a corporate delegation representing Sterling Industries. He arrived early, hoping to avoid attention. But the moment he stepped into the grand ballroom, he felt the weight of comparison. Sophia was already there, radiant in an emerald green gown. Laughter echoing through the space as she engaged with philanthropists, educators, and investors. Her presence commanded admiration. Yet she carried it with a lightness that made brilliance appear effortless. Derek hesitated. For a moment the desire to approach her surged, followed by the fear of rejection. He had learned that recognition could not be demanded. He had also learned that timing matters. Sophia was a river flowing forward. Attempting to dam it now would be futile. He watched her, taking note of her grace, her intellect, and the ease with which she connected with people. She was a master of substance, a woman whose power was quiet but undeniable. At one point their eyes met across the room. Sophia's gaze was calm, polite, and distant. A reminder that closure, not reconciliation, was the choice she had made. She acknowledged him with a brief nod, a gesture that conveyed both recognition and boundary. Derek understood instantly. There would be no second chances to reclaim what he ignored for 8 years. Respect had to precede love, and he had failed at both. After the event, Derek walked alone along the quiet streets, reflecting on the lessons Sophia had imparted without ever raising her voice. He realized that wealth, power, and status are tools, not measures of value. True worth comes from the lives you touch, the integrity with which you operate, and the courage to act without needing applause. He vowed to carry these lessons into every aspect of his life, not for revenge, not for image, but for genuine transformation. Meanwhile, Sophia continued to rise. She expanded the Montgomery Foundation internationally, establishing learning centers in underserved regions, sponsoring mentorship programs, and funding creative initiatives that combine technology, culture, and education. Media outlets chronicled her journey, not as a billionaire's wife, but as a leader in her own right. A woman who had refused to diminish herself for anyone, including someone who had once shared her home. Derek learned a quiet form of patience and humility. He understood that redemption is internal, that growth is slow and often invisible. His days became filled with meaningful work, conversations with people whose lives he could tangibly improve, and the slow reconstruction of character that had been neglected in pursuit of status. He was no longer the man who dismissed his wife at the gala. He was someone who understood the value of unseen labor, of intellectual depth, and the consequences of underestimating others. And in the quiet moments, when he saw the headlines or glimpsed social media updates, he felt a mixture of admiration and regret. Sophia's success was not just public recognition. It was proof that substance triumphs over perception, that intelligence and character are far more enduring than superficial charm, and that true class is measured not by wealth or access, but by the respect with which you treat those around you. Sophia's story became a blueprint for those seeking authenticity in a world obsessed with image. She inspired millions to pursue substance over pretense, to embrace intelligence without arrogance, and to recognize that power comes in many forms, often invisible until fully realized. Derek, now a shadow of his former self in the world of status and prestige, carried the weight of that lesson daily. The final truth Derek learned, and one that no title or promotion could teach, was this: the most expensive mistake is underestimating those who choose to love and empower you quietly. And the greatest lesson in life is that substance, integrity, and vision always outlast ego, arrogance, and superficial judgment. Sophia had reclaimed her narrative. Derek had reclaimed himself. Both had moved forward, but only one had truly been seen for who she was. And that truth would echo far longer than any gala, any title, or any fleeting social admiration. Time moved differently for Derek now. The world he had known, the luxury, the status, the constant validation, had been replaced by quiet reflection and hard-earned humility. Yet each morning, he still checked the news, social media, and headlines. Sophia Montgomery was everywhere. But not as he had once imagined her, a woman defined by her husband's image. She was now a force of influence, respected by philanthropists, educators, global leaders, and the media. Her name alone carried weight, but it was her character, her intellect, and her vision that earned her admiration. Derek often found himself reflecting on the night of the gala, the turning point, the moment the illusion shattered. He replayed Sophia's calm, commanding presence, the way she had taken control of the narrative without malice, and the ripple effect of her revelations. She had exposed not only his arrogance but also the invisible structures he had taken for granted, all while maintaining grace. Sophia had shown the world what true class meant. It wasn't about gowns, invitations, or glittering ballrooms. It was about presence, intelligence, empathy, and authenticity. She had given Derek and everyone watching a masterclass in dignity. Derek had been blind to it before. Now, the lesson was indelible. Sophia continued her work with unwavering focus. The Montgomery Foundation expanded globally, funding initiatives that changed tens of thousands of lives. She launched a mentorship program that paired accomplished women in business, technology, and the arts with underserved youth. She attended board meetings, charity summits, on global conferences, all the while ensuring her influence reached those who would use it wisely. Her visibility was now a tool, not a trophy. Derek, meanwhile, had carved a quieter life. He kept his apartment simple, his routines structured. Therapy became a cornerstone of his transformation, and he faced his insecurities and arrogance with relentless honesty. He volunteered at the same children's hospital wing Sophia had funded, not to impress anyone, but because he understood the impact of genuine contribution. Slowly, he earned respect, not from titles or wealth, but from commitment, humility, and effort. Occasionally, Derek glimpsed Sophia at public events. Their paths crossed at charity auctions, conferences, and dinners supporting social initiatives. Each time, she exuded calm confidence. Her eyes would meet his briefly, acknowledging him politely, without judgment, without anger. Derek realized the depth of what he had lost. Not just the wealth, the influence, or the status, but the woman who had loved him quietly and empowered him silently, expecting nothing in return. He remembered the letter she left behind, every word etched with precision and purpose. Her message had been clear. She had given him the chance to see her worth, and to recognize her contributions, and to value her beyond appearances. He had failed. The irony was bitter. He had been living with a billionaire, shaping his own career, benefiting from opportunities she orchestrated, and never truly noticing her. Sophia had chosen to rise without him, to claim her narrative and her identity. Derek understood that love and respect are earned every day, and once squandered, they cannot be demanded. He had learned that the world does not pause for arrogance, that humility is not weakness, and that substance outlasts appearance every single time. Months turned into a year. Sophia's name became synonymous with strategic philanthropy and visionary leadership. Magazines chronicled her work, highlighting initiatives in education, healthcare, and cultural preservation. Interviews revealed a woman of empathy, intelligence, and quiet power. She inspired not just admiration but action. Schools, charities, and foundations began modeling programs on her initiatives. Derek watched from a distance, feeling both awe and grief. He admired the woman he had once dismissed, but he also mourned the years he had taken for granted. One day, at a gala for arts education funding, Derek found himself near Sophia again. She was in conversation with an international delegation, her posture elegant, her voice clear, her aura commanding. For a moment, he felt a flicker of hope. Could he approach? Could he speak? Could he attempt reconciliation? But Sophia had moved on. She glanced at him, smiled politely, a gesture of acknowledgement, not invitation, and returned to her work. Derek realized then that closure was hers to give, not him to demand. The realization was painful but liberating. He finally understood that his redemption was internal. He could no longer rely on reclaiming the past, only shaping a better version of himself. Sophia's philosophy became clear through her actions. She gave without expectation amigo, and empowered without claiming glory. Derek had witnessed her power firsthand, but she had never wielded it destructively. She had transformed her anonymity into authority, her invisibility into influence, and her silence into a statement of unshakable self-worth. Derek began applying these lessons in his life. He listened more attentively, offered guidance without pride, and treated colleagues, friends, and strangers with genuine respect. He realized the smallest acts of recognition, the simplest words of appreciation, and the quiet gestures of support were the foundation of meaningful relationships. The hollow pursuit of prestige and image could never replace character and integrity. Sophia's influence expanded beyond philanthropy. She launched a media platform dedicated to highlighting women innovators, entrepreneurs, and leaders from underrepresented backgrounds. Her initiatives provided mentorship, funding, and visibility for thousands of women globally. She became a symbol of empowerment, teaching through action, inspiring through results. Her name was no longer a whisper among elites, it became a beacon. Derek observed quietly, learning not through words but by watching her in action. He realized that admiration without understanding is empty. He had once dismissed Sophia as low class, judging her by appearances. Now he understood that true sophistication is measured in intelligence, resilience, empathy, and the courage to act decisively when the world underestimates you. Years passed. Derek rebuilt his life from the ground up. He became an advocate for mentorship, volunteering, and corporate responsibility. He sought to correct mistakes he had made, not to regain what was lost, but to ensure he did not repeat the patterns of arrogance that had defined him. He understood the true meaning of success: the ability to lift others while growing personally, to respect quietly, and to recognize talent without prejudice. Sophia's life continued to shine. She traveled globally, led philanthropic initiatives, and inspired a generation. Her work impacted millions, but she remained grounded, approachable, and humble. Every action reflected her values: integrity, purpose, and empowerment. Derek, observing from the periphery, saw the result of patience, courage, and unwavering self-respect. She had transformed every slight, every underestimation, into fuel for monumental impact. The final lesson Derek carried was clear and permanent. Never underestimate someone because of their circumstances, appearance, or perceived status. Real power is invisible, often quiet, and always enduring. He had lived the consequences of underestimating his partner. He had witnessed the brilliance he had ignored. And he had learned humility in the most costly way possible. Sophia Montgomery's legacy became more than wealth or fame. It became a blueprint for life. Lead with authenticity, act with intention, empower others without expectation, and recognize value even when it is hidden. She taught the world, and Derek, that the most expensive mistake is not money, status, or image. It is underestimating those who love, work, and persist quietly while the world assumes they are small. Derek finally accepted that some losses cannot be reversed, but they can teach lessons that echo across a lifetime. He saw clearly that Sophia's power was not in what she had, but in who she was, and who she chose to be. He had been given a lifetime opportunity to witness greatness firsthand, yet it took humility, regret, and distance to truly understand it. In the end, Sophia did not just reclaim her life, she redefined it. Derek learned the hardest truths of love, respect, and humility. And the world watched as a woman underestimated for 8 years rose to a stature that no arrogance, no dismissal, and no doubt could diminish. Sophia Montgomery stood as a testament to resilience, intelligence, and grace. Derek Bennett, a man who had once judged her worth superficially, became a man who understood it internally, living with lessons etched into his very being. The final image was indelible: a woman of extraordinary substance, rising quietly, confidently, and irrevocably, showing that true class has nothing to do with money or status, and everything to do with vision, courage, and unwavering self-respect. And as the world continued to witness her impact, Derek finally realized that some lessons must be learned the hard way. Some losses must be endured, and some people, once underestimated, will always leave a mark that reshapes everything in their path. Sophia Montgomery had shown the world what it truly means to shine,